2 hours afterwards, Madame Danglars received a most flattering epistle from the Count, in which he entreated her to receive back her favorite dappled greys, protesting that he could not endure the idea of making his entry into the Parisian world of fashion with the knowledge that his splendid equipage had been obtained at the price of a lovely woman's regrets. The horses were sent back wearing the same harness she had seen on them in the morning, only, by the Count's orders, in the center of each rosette that adorned either side of their heads, had been fastened a large diamond. To Danglars Monte Cristo also wrote, requesting him to excuse the whimsical gift of a capricious millionaire, and to beg the Baroness to pardon the Eastern fashion adopted in the return of the horses. During the evening, Monte Cristo quitted Paris for Auteuil, accompanied by Ali. The following day, about 3 o'clock, a single blow struck on the gong summoned Ali to the presence of the Count. Ali, observed his master, as the Nubian entered the chamber, "You have frequently explained to me how more than commonly skillful you are in throwing the lasso, have you not?" Ali drew himself up proudly, and then returned a sign in the affirmative. "I thought I did not mistake. With your lasso you could stop an ox?" Again Ali repeated his affirmative gesture. "Or a tiger?" Ali bowed his head in token of assent. "A lion even?" Ali sprung forwards, imitating the action of one throwing the lasso, then of a strangled lion. "I understand," said Monte Cristo, "you wish to tell me you have hunted the lion?" Ali smiled with triumphant pride as he signified that he had indeed both chased and captured many lions. "But do you believe you could arrest the progress of two horses rushing forwards with ungovernable fury?" The Nubian smiled. "It is well," said Monte Cristo. "Then listen to me. Ere long a carriage will dash past here, drawn by the pair of dappled gray horses you saw me with yesterday. Now, at the risk of your own life, you must manage to stop those horses before my door." Ali descended to the street, and marked a straight line on the pavement immediately at the entrance of the house, and then pointed out the line he had traced to the Count, who was watching him. The Count patted him gently on the shoulder, his usual mode of praising Ali, who, pleased and gratified with the commission assigned him, walked calmly towards a projecting stone forming the angle of the street and house, and, seating himself thereon, began to smoke his chibok, while Monte Cristo re-entered his dwelling, perfectly assured of the success of his plan. Still, as 5 o'clock approached, and the carriage was momentarily expected by the Count, the indication of more than common impatience and uneasiness might be observed in his manner. He stationed himself in a room commanding a view of the street, pacing the chamber with restless steps, stopping merely to listen from time to time for the sound of approaching wheels, then to cast an anxious glance on Ali. But the regularity with which the Nubian puffed forth the smoke of his chibok proved that he at least was wholly absorbed in the enjoyment of his favorite occupation. Suddenly a distant sound of rapidly advancing wheels was heard, and almost immediately a carriage appeared, drawn by a pair of wild, ungovernable horses, while the terrified coachman strove in vain to restrain their furious speed. In the vehicle was a young woman and a child of about 7 or 8 clasped in each other's arms. Terror seemed to have deprived them even of the power of uttering a cry. The carriage creaked and rattled as it flew over the rough stones, and the slightest obstacle under the wheels would have caused disaster, but it kept on in the middle of the road, and those who saw it pass uttered cries of terror. Ali suddenly cast aside his chibok, drew the lasso from his pocket, threw it so skillfully as to catch the forelegs of the near horse in its triple fold, and suffered himself to be dragged on for a few steps by the violence of the shock. Then the animal fell over on the pole, which snapped, and therefore prevented the other horse from pursuing its way. Gladly availing himself of this opportunity, the coachman leapt from his box, but Ali had promptly seized the nostrils of the second horse, and held them in his iron grasp, till the beast, snorting with pain, sunk beside his companion. All this was achieved in much less time than is occupied in the recital. The brief space had, however, been sufficient for a man, followed by a number of servants, to rush from the house before which the accident had occurred, and, as the coachman opened the door of the carriage, to take from it a lady who was convulsively grasping the cushions with one hand, while with the other she pressed to her bosom the young boy, who had lost consciousness. Monte Cristo carried them both to the salon, and deposited them on a sofa. "Compose yourself, madam," said he, "all danger is over." The woman looked up at these words, and, with a glance far more expressive than any entreaties could have been, pointed to her child, who still continued insensible. "I understand the nature of your alarms, madam," said the Count, carefully examining the child, "but I assure you there is not the slightest occasion for uneasiness. Your little charge has not received the least injury, his insensibility is merely the effects of terror, and will soon pass." "Are you quite sure you do not say so to tranquilize my fears? See how deadly pale he is. My child, my darling Edward, speak to your mother, open your dear eyes and look on me once again." "Oh, sir, in pity send for a physician. My whole fortune shall not be thought too much for the recovery of my boy." With a calm smile and a gentle wave of the hand, Monte Cristo signed to the distracted mother to lay aside her apprehensions, then, opening a casket that stood near, he drew forth a phial of Bohemian glass encrusted with gold, containing a liquid of the color of blood, of which he let fall a single drop on the child's lips. Scarcely had it reached them, ere the boy, though still pale as marble, opened his eyes, and eagerly gazed around him. At this, the delight of the mother was almost frantic. "Where am I?" exclaimed she, "and to whom am I indebted for so happy a termination to my late dreadful alarm?" "Madam," answered the Count, "you are under the roof of one who esteems himself most fortunate in having been able to save you from a further continuance of your sufferings." "My wretched curiosity has brought all this about," pursued the lady. "All Paris rung with the praises of Madame Danglars' beautiful horses, and I had the folly to desire to know whether they really merited the high praise given to them." "Is it possible," exclaimed the Count with well-feigned astonishment, "that these horses belong to the Baroness?" "They do, indeed. May I inquire if you are acquainted with Madame Danglars?" "I have that honor, and my happiness at your escape from the danger that threatened you is redoubled by the consciousness that I have been the unwilling and the unintentional cause of all the peril you have incurred. I yesterday purchased these horses of the Baron, but as the Baroness evidently regretted parting with them, I ventured to send them back to her, with a request that she would gratify me by accepting them from my hands. You are, then, doubtless, the Count of Monte Cristo, of whom Hermina has talked to me so much? You have rightly guessed, madam, replied the Count. And I am Madame Eloise de Villefort. The Count bowed with the air of a person who hears a name for the first time. How grateful will M. de Villefort be for all your goodness, how thankfully will he acknowledge that to you alone he owes the existence of his wife and child. Most certainly, but for the prompt assistance of your intrepid servant, this dear child and myself must both have perished. Indeed, I still shudder at the fearful danger you were placed in. I trust you will allow me to recompense worthily the devotion of your man. I beseech you, madam, replied Monte Cristo, not to spoil Ali, either by too great praise or rewards. I cannot allow him to acquire the habit of expecting to be recompensed for every trifling service he may render. Ali is my slave, and in saving your life he was but discharging his duty to me. Nay, interposed Madame de Villefort, on whom the authoritative style adopted by the Count made a deep impression, nay, but consider that to preserve my life he has risked his own. His life, madam, belongs not to him, it is mine, in return for my having myself saved him from death. Madame de Villefort made no further reply, her mind was utterly absorbed in the contemplation of the person who, from the first instant she saw him, had made so powerful an impression on her. During the evident preoccupation of Madame de Villefort, Monte Cristo scrutinized the features and appearance of the boy she kept folded in her arms, lavishing on him the most tender endearments.